Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to OPART, our channel for geopolitical and conflict analysis. Today, we will discuss a very important topic whose learning objective would be to understand 10 most important strategic lessons out of Russia-Ukraine war by any country in this world, be it so-called the third world countries or developing countries, or it may be developed countries as well. So as we are aware, ladies and gentlemen, that the Russia-Ukraine war is 975 days old when I am recording this. That is 2 years and 8 months old. And it is one of the longest active war in the recent history. Though United States of America and the NATO member states fought various wars in Afghanistan, Iraq actively, but those conflicts ended swiftly. But later on, these nations and the state members got involved in the counter-insurgency operations and the stabilization operations post the termination of the conflict. And hence their duration expands from 5 years to 12 years, etc. But the active part of the conventional campaign got over very early. As the matter of fact, as such a long war has been fought between Russia and Ukraine, it offers a lot of important lessons to be derived out of it at strategic level. I am not talking about operational level lessons, neither I am talking about tactical lessons. I am only talking about strategic lessons which a nation needs to learn from this campaign. And these are the top 10 important lessons which are there. Lesson number 1. Mature political leadership. And I think this is one of the most important lessons a country must learn from this campaign. Political leadership is the most important factor in case a nation decides to go in for war. As Karl von Clausewitz has famously said, war is politics by other means. If it is politics, the decision has to be a political decision, or it has to be a decision by the topmost political leader, be it a democratic state or be a authoritarian state. It is the political leadership which puts countries to wars. Hence, the leadership must be mature. It need not be strong only. I am indicating here with an example of Hitler. The political leadership may not be strong as the case was with Hitler, but it need to be mature with various other factors what a leader should have. When I say a mature leadership, it means that there will be lot of times when a nation as a nation or a state has to lower its national ego, national pride, maybe sometimes, not always. It may have to meander between the gaps to find a solution which may lead to wars. Leaders have a very onerous responsibility given them to navigate their citizens through all odds, most safety and security. This is what citizens have given the right to the state. Here comes the maturity in play. They must avoid, they means the leaders of the state, government in power must avoid wars at all costs. Political leaders must fight wars only at the last resort, when the nations or the state is pushed against the wall so much that there is no other option left but to fight war. Save the citizens of the nations. I repeat, I am saying to save the citizens, the safety and security of the nation. Leaders should use all means at disposal to resolve the conditions leading to war. If there is one last ace card left, the leaders must play that ace card and resolve the issue, but must avoid going into war. It has a very, very heavy price to be paid by the citizens of the country who have given that authority which they have handed over their safety and security in the hands of their leaders. Leaders must preserve the citizens. Leaders must think of their citizens first, always and every time. Lesson number 2 is the national sovereignty. National sovereignty, as we all understand, is a nation's right to govern itself without interference from other countries. Countries have the power to make decisions about internal and external matters as per country's interest. Having understood sovereignty, when the country's leadership starts getting exploited or manipulated by the external forces, their national interest will get compromised. We saw this happening in Ukraine. One has to ask this question: was there any different way to handle Ukraine's internal matters of aligning to NATO? Was this bloodshed worth joining the NATO organization? What has it ultimately gained? Total 1 million casualties, $170 billion worth infrastructure destroyed, territories captured, 3.7 million internally displaced population, 6.5 million refugees have gone out of the country, 35% GDP drop, poverty rate has soared in Ukraine by 25%. Is this worth joining NATO? A plain question needs to be asked by the political leadership. Is it worth it? Citizens must ask this question to the leaders. Is it worth to pay that price? He has taken over that country as a leader. He has the responsibility to make it more progressive and then hand it over to the next generation. This is what a democratically elected leader should have in his mind. He has to hand over a better country to the next generation. Hence, the bottom line, leader must think of his citizens first, always and every time. Let's come to, ladies and gentlemen, to lesson number 3, strategic communications. As we know, initial phases of war, Russia was just taken out of the internet. Russia could not communicate its point of view to the world. Why Russia is going to war? With the lack of Russia not able to give its narrative, the entire Western media captured the narrative. And what we all talk and in what language what we use today is all what has been fed by the Western media. Like Russia is an aggressor, Ukraine is the victim, Russia is losing the war, Ukraine is winning the war, Russian equipment is a failure, Russian troops are running from the battlefield. We have heard all these stories. So the lesson is, the strategic communication to each and every citizen of the world has to be captured by every country so that in times to come, the countries do not falter and they are able to communicate their point of view. Countries need to ensure they are connected to internet through various means. Countries must invest in creating their own internet links and multiple connectivity to different nations, even at the cost of one-to-one connections or satellite connections. Explore and invent all possible means to ensure that the people of the world get to know the country's perspective through social media. And I am highlighting this word social media, and I will discuss this in further slides why it is important. We all understand it is important. Why it is important, we'll discuss in detail. Country's narrative is heard and it is molded as per the requirement of the country who is going to war. Country's own media has the influence of the world forum must be ensured by the leadership. It has to be worked upon in peacetime and it requires investment and dedication. Not only that the media is heard, it should be authentic so that the people around the globe trust that media. When I say the media has to be authentic and has to be trustworthy, the leadership of the country and the country must understand that it is important to know who is invested in the media channels and the media houses of that country. This is strategic space and only the investors of that particular country must be allowed to invest in this strategic space. Coming on to the social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp have become the weapons of mass mobilization, disinformation, narrative war, information war, and I would say they have become weapons of social media implosion. Implosion means the country collapses within. Countries must have their own national social media platforms. State must consider this as strategic space. If this space is lost, the country is bound to doom. They have lost their war. As countries around the nation guard their borders and prevent any invaders from capturing any piece of land or territory and thereby ensuring safety and security of the country. Similarly, this cognitive space needs to be guarded by the state. I repeat, the cognitive space needs to be guarded by the state. As countries guard their trade and economic interests by putting tariffs and banning any anti-national company. Similarly, the state must ban these social media weapons of mass implosion. The bottom line is, in today's world, cognitive space is a strategic national asset to be guarded against invasion. Lesson number 4, National Contingency Planning. Ladies and gentlemen, as the internet was weaponized by the Westerners, so were various organizations and various commodities across the globe. We are all aware about it. SWIFT, as we all know, global payment system. Dollar was weaponized. Trade sanctions, economic sanctions were put on the nation. Food and technology was not given to the Russians. Political leaders and top hierarchy was declared criminals of war. International law was weaponized. As we all know, oil, diplomatic isolation, everything has been used as a weapon against the country. Now the country must plan national level contingency for all these weaponized organizations and commodities. Russia could only withstand this due to its long-term plan of reducing its dependency on dollars and long-term contingency planning for all above mentioned commodities and things. Imagine the condition of the country, North Korea, Iran, how these weapons have been used over a period of time to destroy these nations. The point is not to say that Iran or North Korea is right or wrong, but the point is to look beyond and analyze these unseen weapons of mass destruction. And it is good to see that the nations have initiated following steps to counter these weapons. Like for example, SWIFT global payment system. Nations are developing alternate global payment systems like Russia, SPSF, and Chinese CIPS. Dollar, which was used as a weapon, people have started de-dollarization campaigns. It is the hottest topic in the world economy. The country must trade with other countries in its own currency, and this trend is picking up. China is promoting RMB, Russia is trading in rubles pegged against gold. Countries like China and Japan started pumping US bonds. BRIC currency is being talked about, and in the recently conducted BRICS at Kazan meeting, we could also see the BRICS currency which was shown in the hands of President Putin. Countries are accepting cryptocurrencies as the mode of payment. Countries are trading in their own currencies. These are the things which will reduce the dependence on dollar, and it is very essential for the world to de-dollarize. Trade sanctions, economic sanctions. The countries have to plan multiple partners and have strategic partners wherein they will get their strategic commodities. For example, Russia was able to sell its oil to China and in India and get financial assets to run the war and to run the country. Economic sanctions. Counter-economic sanctions is required to be put on the countries who put sanctions. Strong ties with strategic countries is important. For example, India held Russia's hand not buckle under any pressure. So such alliances and hand-holding is required, and such relationships is required in the world. Food and technology was weaponized. Self-reliance is the key. Country must stop giving food or its technology whenever it is necessary in the interest of the nation. If the political leaders are declared criminals, it can only be countered by having strong diplomatic relationship with strategic partners. It is also very important that the national political leadership must ensure that country is not labeled as an aggressor, as the Russia was in case of Russia-Ukraine war. The lesson must be learned from Israel-Hamas war as to how to create conditions to declare yourself as a victim and not as an aggressor. Oil and diplomatic isolation. Again, for oil, we need to have alternate resources like gas, coal, nuclear, wind, solar. Self-reliance is the key here as well. Any country cannot have a situation where gas or the oil is stopped and the war comes to an end. Then they have to settle for conditions which are not good for that country. Diplomatic isolations. We should have steadfast strategic partners. Mature political leadership is required at the helm of affairs to deal with such national contingencies. Coming on to the next lesson, ladies and gentlemen, narrative control. Narrative is important to gain international support. Avoid unnecessary entanglement in international laws and garner own public support. Narrative control can only be done if a country has its strategic communication open to the world. Hence, strategic communication is paramount. This is seen in case of Israel-Hamas war, where Israel was able to communicate to the world and put its point of view very, very clearly in every forum, be it United Nations or on social media. The bottom line is the country needs to remain connected to the internet and then dominate the social media as well. Ukraine, when did not had internet, was gifted by Elon Musk 15,000 Starlink terminals. We all know this. The only aim was to have the strategic communication, operational and tactical communication going on internet through satellite terminals. How the narrative control dictates the mind impressions around the world? We still feel Russia is still an aggressor and Israel is still a victim. Countries need to control their narrative at any cost. Lesson number 6. Secure military logistics supply chain. Ladies and gentlemen, no nation in the world will be able to sustain long wars if it does not have access to military hardware, weapons, technology, manpower, equipment. Ukraine was able to stand against Russia only because it got wholehearted support from NATO states and United States of America and European Union and its friends. Russia, being a superpower, has to buy drones and military equipment from Iran, North Korea and other national friendly nations. Even Israel has to be supplied ammunition and other military equipment by United States of America. USA has to deploy THAAD air defense missile system to protect Israel against likely rocket and missile attacks from Iran. The critical military technology is, if missing, will be weaponized or be used as leveraging tool to bargain by the opposing parties or by the powerful states to stop the war at their will. We know how Canada stopped the supply of TB2 drone engines to Turkey, and Turkey had to develop its own ways and means to get the engines and get the TB2 drone project ahead. Hence, self-reliance is critical to national security. No nation can have national autonomy or sovereignty without this capability. Having strong strategic partner is the key to have critical military technology, logistic supply chain under control. They may not be allies. These nations, strong strategic partners, may not be allies, but must keep supplying the hardware under any circumstances. That should be the level of confidence at nation-to-nation strategic cooperation. Lesson number 7, ladies and gentlemen, ensure energy and food security. As we know, even if a country has military might to fight but does not have food and oil, it is doomed. The army and the country marches on stomach, and so do the war machine marches on oil. Russia could sustain such a long war because it had oil reserves and vast lands for crop. Also, dependent partners to supply food. Countries like China, India, Iran, North Korea, and other friendly countries. A country that does not have oil reserves cannot afford to fight such a long war. War tempo will die of its own. Hence, it is critical to ensure the energy and the food security is guaranteed before the war starts. Now coming on to the lesson number 8, power of allies. The Ukraine could not have faced the onslaught of Russian military if the NATO states, United States, or the European nation had not come to its rescue. Similarly, Israel is also getting full military support from United States of America, UK, and other European nations. Hence, the power of allies cannot be underestimated. Russia started alone and had to make allies from Iran, North Korea, and other countries to find military support and the financial support. Russia had just concluded the Treaty of Comprehensive Strategic Partnership with North Korea. That is the importance of allies. Lesson number 9, ladies and gentlemen, preserving national economy during war. Any nation who is not able to sustain its economy during war also dooms. Let's take an example of British Empire after World War II. The debt was so enormous and they had to wind up the entire empire after the war. The economy must be able to sustain throughout the war. Russia had taken the battle into Ukraine, hence preserved its economy. Ukraine, on the other hand, has been decimated and its GDP has come down 25%. Hence, Russia did not suffer any major losses in its economy, less what is expending on war, but Ukraine has been decimated. Lesson number 10, citizens' morale and willpower. Ladies and gentlemen, if everything fails, less the citizen morale and the willpower, even then the war can be fought and even won. We have an umpty number of examples where the armies have fought in most horrible and inhumane conditions without proper military equipment and leadership, and come out victorious. The only driving factor in this case is the war has to be just, and every citizen must believe it is his war. He has to fight and win for the country. If this situation exists, then the country will emerge victorious or will be able to sustain the long-term wars. Ukraine has been successful in achieving this and has been able to sustain so long in spite of the vast disparity and technological gap between Ukraine and Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's talk about the top 10 strategic lessons in the order of priority. The top of priority is mature leadership topmost. Second is national sovereignty, ensuring food and security, securing the national logistic supply chain, national contingency planning for the weaponization of Western system organization. Sixth important is the citizens' morale and willpower. Seventh is the power of allies, preserving national economy during war. Ninth is strategic communication. 10th is the narrative control. This is the order of priority as far as my understanding of this strategic lesson goes. I request all the viewers to give their order of priority and also suggest if there is something else very important strategic lesson which can be included. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. If you have reached so far, thank you so much for listening to this video. Give your comments, like and subscribe. All your suggestions and point of improvement are most welcome. And if you have any suggestions for any new topic, please do leave a comment. I will try to incorporate that topic and make a video on that. Thank you so much.